My name is Hans Schneider, and I was a soldier in the Wehrmacht during World War II. When Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union, began in June 1941, I was a young, eager soldier, filled with a sense of duty and belief in our cause. We were told that the Soviet Union would be crushed quickly, that we would be home by Christmas. The reality, however, was far different. We advanced rapidly at first, sweeping through the vast, flat plains of the Soviet Union. The sheer size of the territory was staggering. Villages and towns fell before us, and we captured thousands of Soviet soldiers. But the further we pushed, the more we encountered fierce resistance. The Soviets, despite being caught off guard initially, regrouped and fought back with a ferocity we had not anticipated. The summer of 1941 was marked by relentless marches and intense battles. Our supply lines stretched perilously thin, but we continued to push forward, driven by the belief in a swift victory. The initial successes made us overconfident, and we underestimated the resolve and resourcefulness of the Soviet defenders. The vast distances, the harsh terrain, and the unpredictable weather began to take their toll on our morale and our effectiveness. We witnessed the brutal realities of war as we advanced. Villages were burned, and civilians were caught in the crossfire. The ideological fervor that had driven us was beginning to clash with the human cost of our campaign. As we moved deeper into Soviet territory, the resistance grew fiercer. The Soviet soldiers, once demoralized and disorganized, were now fighting with a determination that surprised us. 1942 Stalingrad. By the summer of 1942, our objective was clear: Stalingrad. This city on the Volga River had become a symbol of Soviet resistance, and capturing it would be a major blow to the enemy's morale. We believed it would be a swift victory. As we approached Stalingrad, however, we encountered bitter resistance. The Soviet defenders were tenacious, fighting for every inch of their city. The battle for Stalingrad was unlike anything I had experienced. It was brutal, close-quarters combat, with snipers hiding in the ruins and street fighting that seemed to never end. The Luftwaffe bombed the city into rubble, but the Soviets used the ruins to their advantage. We fought for control of factories, apartment blocks, and even individual rooms. The Volga River, which we had hoped to reach quickly, remained stubbornly out of our grasp. The city became a labyrinth of destruction. Every street, every building was contested. We fought for weeks to gain a few hundred meters. The Soviets had transformed the ruins into a fortress. They used the sewers to move undetected, launched surprise attacks from hidden positions, and counterattacked with relentless ferocity. Our casualties mounted, and the promised quick victory seemed more distant than ever. As autumn turned to winter, the situation became desperate. The cold was unlike anything we had ever experienced. Our supplies dwindled, and we began to suffer from frostbite and hunger. The Soviets launched a counteroffensive in November, encircling our forces in Stalingrad. We were cut off from reinforcements and supplies. The once confident Wehrmacht was now trapped in a frozen hell. 1943, Encirclement and Defeat. By January 1943, it was clear that our situation was hopeless. The Soviets tightened their grip around Stalingrad, and our commanders ordered us to hold out at all costs. Morale plummeted as we realized that no help was coming. Starvation and disease took a heavy toll. The daily bombardments and relentless attacks from the Soviet forces left us exhausted and demoralized. I remember the bitter cold, the gnawing hunger, and the constant fear. We had no choice but to fight for survival in the frozen ruins of the city. Our once mighty army was reduced to a ragged band of survivors, fighting against impossible odds. The Soviets offered us surrender terms, but our high command refused, ordering us to continue the fight. On January 31st, 1943, our commander, Field Marshal Paulus, surrendered to the Soviets. I was among the tens of thousands of German soldiers taken prisoner. The defeat at Stalingrad was a crushing blow to our morale and marked a turning point in the war. We were marched into captivity, and many of us would never see Germany again. Captivity and reflection. The conditions in the Soviet POW camps were harsh. We were subjected to brutal treatment, inadequate food, and forced labor. Many of my comrades succumbed to illness and malnutrition. As I toiled in the freezing cold, I had plenty of time to reflect on the war and the ideology that had led us to this point. The propaganda that had once fueled my zeal now seemed hollow and misguided. Life in captivity was a daily struggle. The guards were harsh, and the Soviet winter was unforgiving. We were put to work rebuilding the very cities we had destroyed, clearing rubble, and repairing infrastructure. It was a bitter irony that we were now helping to undo the devastation we had caused. The comradeship among the prisoners was the only thing that kept many of us going. We shared our meager rations, looked out for one another, and tried to maintain a sense of dignity and humanity in the face of our dire circumstances. 1945, the end of the war. By the time the war ended in 1945, I had been a prisoner for over 2 years. I was among the fortunate ones who survived and was eventually repatriated to Germany. Returning home, I found a country in ruins, much like the cities we had destroyed in the Soviet Union. The war had taken a heavy toll on both sides, leaving scars that would last for generations. The Germany I returned to was vastly different from the one I had left. Cities were in ruins, the economy was shattered, and the people were struggling to rebuild their lives. The realization of the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime, including the Holocaust, added a heavy burden of guilt and shame. Many of us who returned from the front lines found it difficult to reconcile our experiences with the harsh reality of what our country had become. Post-war reflection. In the years that followed, I tried to rebuild my life in a shattered Germany. The memories of the Eastern Front, especially the horrors of Stalingrad, haunted me. I often thought of the comrades I had lost and the immense suffering we had inflicted and endured. The war had been a devastating lesson in the futility of blind nationalism and the horrors of total war. I found work in a small town far from the cities where the scars of war were most visible. I married, started a family, and tried to leave the past behind, but the nightmares persisted. I would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, reliving the horrors of the battlefield. The guilt and the memories of the friends I had lost were a constant shadow over my life. As I grew older, I shared my experiences with younger generations, hoping to impart the lessons learned from those dark days. The war had shown me the depths of human cruelty, but also the resilience and capacity for reflection and change. My story is a testament to the harsh realities of war and the importance of remembering our past to build a better future.